Yeah, we back. Yeah, we back. Now, today, we're going to talk about the divide and conquer tactic that I see happening in the media right now between Nigeria and Niger. Now, yesterday, I dropped a bombshell interview. Now, I wasn't the one that conducted the interview. I was simply reacting to it. But it was the president of Niger, right? And he simply just laid it out all on the table. He gave us the answers to the million-dollar questions that we all been asking, right? We talk about terrorism in Africa. Where are these terrorists getting their weapons, their funding, their support, their logistics, their training? He laid it out all on the table with times, locations, names, and dates, and everything in between. And he did not leave anything up to speculation. He told us, you want to know who's sponsoring terrorism? It's them boys over there in Paris. Now, during this interview, which was many hours long, there were also some Nigerian government officials who were implicated during this interview. And unfortunately, I'm now seeing the narrative change, and now it's transforming into Niger versus Nigeria instead of staying focused on the main target, which is our European colonial enemies. Now, the main reason behind the recent tension between the two countries is because back in early December, there was a terrorist attack which targeted a piece of critical infrastructure, right? An oil pipeline was destroyed back in early December, as you can see, take a look up on the screen. And I believe the organization responsible for this terrorist attack goes by the name of Laquara, and they operate in the border regions between Niger, northern Nigeria, Mali. Like we spoke about in the video yesterday, President Chiani told us all these little terrorist groups, all these little terrorist factions, they operate along the border of Mali, Burkina Faso with Niger, right? So they can slip easy in and out the border into the next country. Now, if you watched the video yesterday, you know that President Chiani had said that he had spoken with the Nigerian chief of intelligence and spoken to him about how there is a terrorist element in the region called Laquara that has foreign sponsors and foreign backers, right? And in fact, he went as far as to actually name the specific Nigerian government officials that he actually had a conversation with in regards to this specific terrorist group and their foreign sponsors. Now, for whatever reason, a few months later, the Nigerian chief of intelligence, Ahmed Abubakar, that he was talking about, that he name dropped in the interview, he resigned from his position a few months after that. They didn't give a reason why. Now, when this recent attack on the oil pipeline took place, the president of Niger actually summoned, I believe, the Nigerian ambassador to have a conversation about the situation. Now, I don't think that President Chiani ever came out and said that the government in Nigeria is funding or sponsoring or supporting terrorists to destabilize Niger. No, what I believe President Chiani said was there are terrorist groups operating in the border regions under the nose of the Nigerian government. They are aware of these terrorist elements. They are aware of their existence, right? And these same terrorist groups are carrying out terrorist attacks on Niger, right? They are backed by foreign powers, foreign players, with the objective of destroying the government in Niger, with the objective of destabilizing and removing the administration in Niger. That is what President Chiani said, right? He never said that Nigeria or Nigerians are sponsoring or supporting terrorism. He said there are specific terrorist groups that are backed by foreign powers that are operating under the nose of the Nigerian federal government that are carrying out attacks in Niger. That's why he summoned the ambassador to have a private conversation. That's why he warned the Nigerian intelligence chief months back in March before he resigned about these terrorist groups, specifically the one named Laquara, right? And in fact, I'm going to go into a video by Professor Usman Youssef, right? Dr. Usman Youssef, hematologist, oncologist, and he's going to talk about this terrorist group by the name of Laquara, which carried out this recent terrorist attack on a pipeline in Niger. Run the footage.
The only thing that will help you with this Laquara nonsense, this optic we are seeing in Laquara is suspect. I'll tell you. I had the other day the spokesperson of the defense headquarters in Nigeria saying, in his press briefing, saying Laquaras, they are new, they are related to the coup in Niger. Hello, Mr. Spokesperson, you should know better. This Laquara, as we know today, have been around in this country, a sovereign Nigeria, non-state actors from Mali or from wherever came to Nigeria. They've been here for 7 years. 7 years, since 2017, at the invitation of local communities to help them fight bandits, to help them do the job that security services could not do. They came under the nose of the federal government, under the nose of the state government, under the nose of all security services, under the nose of all our intelligence services. And now all of a sudden we are doing this. The question to ask Nigerians should be asking is, why did we allow a non-state actor to come into Nigeria, settle, and continue its activities for the past 7 years? And why all of a sudden are we saying, oh, Laquara, just to give a reason for France to come in? That is the only reason. Fellow Nigerians, you can never stop this Lakura, Boko Haram, and all these bandits, all these terrorists, if you don't have good relationship with your neighbors. Not France. Bringing France in is going to make us into a hotbed for terrorism. It's going to make us poorer. It's going to make us second-class citizens. They will open a base in Katsina State and be digging our gold, and I cannot go there as a person from Katsina. We've seen that in Niger. We've seen that in Mali. This is what they have been doing. So fellow Nigerians, we should open our eyes. We in the North will vigorously resist any attempt by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's government to allow foreign military bases on our soil. End of story. I don't know how else to say it.
As you can see, this organization has been active since 2016, 2018. But for whatever reason, they're just now making the news, right? And in fact, in the bombshell interview yesterday that I reacted to, President Chiani said this organization in particular is being sponsored and backed by foreign powers. They're being armed, supported, and backed by foreign powers, right? And just in the last 2 months, they've carried out 2 major terrorist attacks. In early November, they launched an attack that killed 15 people in a Nigerian village. And then in early December, they destroyed the pipeline in Niger, right? A pipeline that was supposed to be the biggest pipeline in Africa. Now, for whatever reason, you tell me, why would they attack a pipeline? Why would they attack a piece of critical infrastructure, right? Of what benefit of that is to them? Think about it for a second. These guys don't have any knowledge or intelligence on the value of an oil pipeline. Why are they attacking critical infrastructure in Niger? Obviously, these are mercenaries in the pocket of some foreign backers. Now, this is not the first time that this same exact oil pipeline, the Niger-Benin oil pipeline, has been attacked and targeted by terrorist groups. I believe back over the summer, it was also attacked by a different terrorist group. Take a look up on the screen. Niger authorities confirmed the sabotage of an oil pipeline by rebels. Rebels, as we know, are terrorists. Now, that happened back in June of 2024. Take a look up on the screen. On Monday, the Rebel Patriotic Liberation Front, which is fighting for the release of President Mohamed Bazoum, said it had targeted the pipeline as a message to Niger's military generals, right? So this terrorist group called the Patriotic Liberation Front, who said they are fighting for the overthrown President Mohamed Bazoum, claimed responsibility for the attack on the pipeline back in June. Now, as we know, Mohamed Bazoum, the Western-backed president, the ally of France, right? He was overthrown in a military coup d'etat sometime back in July 2023. All of a sudden, you've seen terrorist groups start popping up in the region talking about we're fighting for the release of President Mohamed Bazoum, right? It's crazy. Now, let's continue. The leader, Mahamadou Saleh, has demanded the release of the democratically elected president and threatened to attack oil installations. Now, the Niger-Benin oil pipeline was supposed to be the largest oil pipeline in the entire continent, but for whatever reason, these terrorists keep on attacking it. So obviously there's somebody somewhere who does not want to see this project come to fruition, does not want to see this project finish to completion. Because like I said, attacking an oil pipeline project does nothing for you in terms of personal enrichment. There's no value in that, right? So you go destroy the pipeline, then you go back home, you still broke, you still dusty. So it did nothing for you personally, unless you were contracted to do a job, right? Unless you were hired as a mercenary to do a job and you did your job. Now, the terrorist group that attacked the pipeline back over the summer, they actually surrendered and handed over their arms to the authorities. Take a look up on the screen back in early November. The Niger terrorists fighting for the ousted president's release hand over their weapons, right? So that terrorist group from over the summer, they surrendered. Take a look up on the screen. 9 members of an armed terrorist movement seeking the release of Niger's president surrendered on Monday. The Patriotic Liberation Front was set up in August 2023, a month after Niger's democratically elected president Mohamed Bazoum was overthrown in a military coup, right? So a month after this guy was overthrown from government, a terrorist group was set up the month after that began attacking critical infrastructure in the country. Now, most recently, you have this other terrorist group, like we mentioned before, named Lakura. They also attacked that same pipeline. Now, for whatever reason, terrorist groups keep targeting this same pipeline, the Niger-Benin oil pipeline. So like I said, there's somebody somewhere who does not want to see this project come to fruition. They do not want to see Niger begin exporting their oil to become an oil producing nation, right? You already got the uranium. Now you got the oil on deck too. Oh my goodness. So obviously somebody somewhere is hating, somebody somewhere is hating on my boys. Now let's continue. Now I want to talk about Nigeria's relationship with France. I see everybody making a big deal about Tinubu linking up with France. And yes, it is a big deal. I'm not minimizing that, but I'm saying that this is nothing new for France. France is doing what it's always been doing for the past few years. And what is that? Simply bunny hopping to, knocking on doors, going to this place, going to that place, trying to find a permanent place to settle. You know, they're basically couch surfing, right? They're sleeping on somebody's couch. They just moving around. They cannot find a permanent position to land. They're finding somewhere to land, right? Now, let me break it down for you from the beginning. Let's go down the timeline, right? From when Mali was first overthrown, because Mali was the first country to kick out the French, right? So we got to go back to Mali. Assimi Goïta originally was not the leader of the new government, right? Assimi Goïta was originally the vice president, but he was the orchestrator behind this coup d'etat. Right, so Assimi Goïta was the vice president to another gentleman by the name of Ba Ndao. And this gentleman was an elder military leader. He was going to act as the civilian president, right? The civilian leader with the military behind him. And as we know, Assimi Goïta, he comes from a military family. And these two guys had a close relationship because I believe that Ba Ndao had served alongside Assimi Goïta's father in the military way back in the day, right? But unfortunately, I believe what had happened was similar to the president in Guinea, similar to the president in Gabon. The information I've heard from those who are close to the events, this guy ended up coming to certain compromises with the French. And when this was discovered, because allegedly he was having private conversations with the French ambassador, etc., Assimi Goïta ended up removing him from power and taking full control of the government. And as we already know, shortly after that, the French military, the French ambassador was told, it's time to go home. It's time to leave, my boy. It's time to leave. Take a look up on the screen. This article came out around that time. Mali's vice president ousts the president and prime minister from office and assumes power, right? So Assimi Goïta, ever since then, has been in power, right? Because the original guy, he ended up betraying the operation. Right, he ended up betraying the operation and cutting deals with the French, so he had to be removed from power. Now, months after Assimi Goïta came to power, I had noticed there was a coup d'etat that occurred next door in Burkina Faso. Right, a strange character by the name of Paul Henry Damiba had came to power, and it was strange to me because when he rose to power, I didn't see that he was met with any hostility or any type of sanctions or any type of reactions in general. Right. So I was waiting for him to take similar actions as Assimi Goïta, right? I'm waiting for him to kick out the French. He never did it, right? He never kicked out any French companies, any French military personnel. He didn't do anything. And that's when I realized, okay, this guy, he's in the pocket of the French, right? He's working with the French. It came as no surprise to me because the French at this time, they were recently kicked out of Mali. So now they orchestrated this fake coup d'etat, this fraudulent coup d'etat, when really it's their guy in office. So when they got kicked out of Mali, they strengthened their presence in neighboring countries like Burkina Faso, right? They went next door. Now, unfortunately for them, months later, Damiba would be removed from power and he would be overthrown by Ibrahim Traoré. And then, of course, as we already know, shortly after, Ibrahim Traoré would demand the departure of all French military personnel, right? It's time to leave the country. So that's two countries, right? They got kicked out of Mali. Then right after that, got kicked out of Burkina. So at that point, what did France decide to do? They decided to go next door and strengthen their relationship with Niger, right? The current president at that time was President Mohamed Bazoum. Take a look up on the screen. Niger becomes France's partner of last resort after the Mali withdrawal, right? After they got kicked out of Mali, this article came out from the French media and said Niger has become France's partner of last resort, right? Got kicked out of Mali, got kicked out of Burkina, now you run into Niger, right? France just been running around the continent trying to find a permanent place to reside. As France and its European allies prepare to leave Mali, France plans to increase its military cooperation with Niger in the fight against Islamist insurgents in the Sahel. But it's a marriage of convenience as coups and rising anti-French sentiments in the region have left Paris with little choice. So, like I said, when I look at the current situation between Nigeria and Niger, and you see the close relationship with Macron and Tinubu, because France is simply doing what they've always been doing, trying to bounce around, trying to find somebody that will accept them in, trying to find a friend in the region, trying to find an ally in the region, right? Everywhere they go, they get kicked out. So now they're going to Nigeria. What I'm showing you is they've been bouncing around. Ever since they got kicked out of Mali, they went to Burkina, they went to Niger, they just bouncing around trying to find anywhere to land. Now, unfortunately for France, a few months after that, President Mohamed Bazoum would also be overthrown in a military coup d'etat. And then the military government, take a look up on the screen. Niger's military government revokes the military deals with France. So just like they got kicked out of Mali and Burkina, they also got kicked out of Niger, unfortunately for them, right? Now, if you remember at that time, take a look up on the screen, France actually rejected the proposal. When the military government told France it's time to leave, France rejects the Niger military government's move to scrap the bilateral military agreements, right? So they told France to leave, and France was like, yo, I'm not leaving, bruh. I ain't going nowhere, bro. I know it's your house, but I ain't going nowhere, bro. I ain't going no goddamn where. France told the Niger military government, I'm not leaving the country. Could you believe it, bro? Now, of course, eventually they ended up leaving, but the audacity during that time. I remember I made videos about it too. The audacity, bro. France, that ass said, I'm not going nowhere. You got to understand at that point, the desperation was setting in, right? You got kicked out of Mali, then Burkina, then you run to Niger trying to seek refuge. You got kicked out of there too. So at that point, France was trying to stand their ground. They said, I ain't going nowhere, right? I ain't going no goddamn where, bro. Y'all chasing me out of Africa. I ain't going nowhere, bro. Now, of course, like I said many times before, our enemies are very arrogant. So they like to put on a good face, right? They claim I'm not going nowhere, but as we already know, take a look up on the screen. Eventually, yes, France did eventually leave. France completes the military withdrawal from Niger. Now, like I said, these guys, a lot of times, they just be talking a lot of shit, man. They just be talking that shit. Sometimes you got to call they bluff. Now, if you take a look at the map on the screen, you see Mali, Burkina, Niger. Now, at the bottom, you see Nigeria. So now it's no surprise. Recently, we've seen Emmanuel Macron and President Tinubu of Nigeria. They become very close, similar to how President Mohamed Bazoum and Macron were very close back in 2023. Now, if you notice, what France has been doing for the past 4, 5, 6 years, they're simply just bouncing around, right? They don't have a permanent place to stay. They're simply bouncing around, going from place to place, couch surfing, going from sleeping on this person's couch, sleeping on that person's couch. They have no permanent residence. They're basically homeless on the African continent, right? They're looking for a place to stay, desperate, knocking on doors, hoping anybody will accept them at this point. So now they've set their sights on Nigeria. And the reason why I broke down the timeline is because I don't want it to become Nigeria versus Niger, because that's not what it was about. Because when the French had went over to President Mohamed Bazoum in Niger, nobody was saying that it's Niger versus Burkina Faso or Niger versus Mali, right? Nobody said that, right? Because we understand what France was doing. France was simply going next door to set up shop next door. The same thing they're doing now with Nigeria. So let's not have it become not Nigeria versus Niger, because that's not what it is. France is simply bouncing around to whoever they could go to. It has nothing about Nigeria versus Niger. We brothers at the end of the day. It's not about that. So let's not fall into divide and conquer nonsense. Bola Tinubu, President Tinubu, similar to Mohamed Bazoum, is what you call a Western ally in the region. That's what they call a trusted Western ally. That's what they call him, right? So I'm saying this just so we don't get caught up in the nonsense. We should not be fighting each other. We got to keep our eyes focused on the enemy. Now, let's jump into some of these articles, right? Take a look up on the screen. These articles came out shortly after President Tinubu's visit to France, after a state visit to meet President Emmanuel Macron. It said this: France hosts the president of Nigeria, a pivotal country in Macron's Africa policy. President Tinubu is a key partner in France's efforts to shift its diplomacy towards the continent's English-speaking countries and put its setbacks in the Sahel behind it. Right, so France then got kicked out of Francophone Africa. Now they want to forge relationships with some of the English speakers. Now let's continue. This headline says, France's new African ally. Nigeria's president is desperate for foreign investment, and after being ousted from the Sahel, France is seeking new friends on the continent. French President Emmanuel Macron welcomed the Nigerian President Tinubu in Paris last week, marking the first state visit to the country by a Nigerian leader in more than 2 decades, as France looks to pivot to Anglophone Africa after recently being booted out by several of its military-led former colonies, such as Mali and Niger. Over the past decade, France has been courting the continent's biggest non-Francophone economies, including South Africa, Ethiopia, and Kenya. Macron made his first official visit to South Africa in 2021, and in 2019, he had made the first ever visit by a French president to Kenya since independence in 1963. So as you can see, Macron is simply bouncing around, right? He's homeless. He's going to South Africa. He's going to Johannesburg. He going to Kenya. He going to Ethiopia. Man, he just going every goddamn where, bro. The man is homeless. He knocking on doors, right? Let's continue. During Tinubu's visit, a mostly white French military band gave a viral rendition of Nigerian Afrobeat star P-Square's song Taste the Money, complete with fake Nigerian accents. Now, I spoke about that in a previous video. Yes, Emmanuel Macron gave President Tinubu man, a crazy state dinner, right? He lavished him with gifts and compliments and treated him like a boss, right? Treated President Tinubu like a king, right? Obviously, because like I said, the desperation is setting in. France is desperate to remain in the continent. So now they're trying to get into President Tinubu's good graces, right? So they could stay in the region, right? Now I'm going to play a clip from when I had spoken about literally Emmanuel Macron had the French military singing and dancing for President Tinubu. That's how desperate France is right now. Run the clip. I'll be right back. It's like when someone's reputation has been destroyed in a certain city or a certain neighborhood, so they skip town and go to a different city to try to start over again. That's what the French are doing, right? They got ran out of French West Africa. Their reputation is in the toilet. So now they're trying to skip town, go across town, go to a different state where their reputation is fresh. They got a clean slate and they can start over. Take a look up on the screen. President Macron even had the goddamn military singing songs for Tinubu, the president of Nigeria, right? The Republican Guard, the French Republican Guard sitting there throwing a concert for the president of Nigeria, right? They're really trying to flatter the black man. But I'm telling you, this is what I mean. They come to the black man with their hat in their hand. Please, Mr. Black Man, can we have a conversation? Please, Mr. Black Man, give me 5 minutes of your time, please. But that goes to show that France economically and geopolitically and diplomatically is in a very vulnerable position, like I told you. Now we back. Let's jump back into these articles. Tinubu, an unpopular president dealing with a nosediving economy and a currency in free fall, signed a critical minerals deal with France, much to the ire of many Nigerians who felt that the French have a poor record when it comes to offering fair deals to African nations, despite France having long been a key trade partner. Now, yes, obviously, this didn't really make the headline news, but like I said, France is desperate, man. France is desperate, looking for a permanent place to land, right? They tired of getting kicked out. They tired of moving around, going from this couch to that couch, right? So recently, after the state visit, obviously, there is no charity when it comes to international politics. So when you see France inviting Tinubu over to the Elysee Palace and having a military band and concert for him and a state dinner and the whole shebang, receiving a military salute upon arrival. I believe Macron even gave a speech and proposed a toast during the state dinner. I mean, when you go all out like that, as if the King of England is coming to town, then you already know some major deals were signed, right? Some major paperwork was signed. But of course, like I mentioned before, France is very desperate, so they're definitely trying to flatter any black man that's willing to listen to anything they got to say at this point, right? Now, like the article said, they only signed a memorandum of understanding. So it's not, a whole contract, a whole agreement. It's simply a memorandum of understanding. As you can see, Nigeria and France signed a memorandum of understanding on critical minerals. Now, it's not an official agreement yet. It's just basically saying that we plan to work together in the future and strike some deals in the future in the sector of critical minerals. Now, let's continue. Nigeria and France have agreed to develop joint projects to promote and diversify the critical mineral value chain in the solid mineral sector of both countries. Critical minerals such as copper, lithium, nickel, cobalt, and rare earth elements are essential to clean energy technologies. Now, obviously, France trying to forge relations or solidify relations with Nigeria from a logical standpoint, it makes sense, right? You've been driven out of other nations that are very rich in natural resources, and Nigeria, similar to those nations, equally as rich in natural resources, abundance of natural resources. Also, I believe that there's some psychological warfare at play, right? Because I'm sure Emmanuel Macron, he understands that the leaders of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, I'm sure he understands that the leaders of the AES are watching the developments, right? So they sitting back watching Tinubu taking trips to France multiple times, right? Everybody smiling in the cameras. So Macron, as you can see, he's basically sending a message saying that, oh, you thought you kicked me out of Africa, right? You thought you kicked me out the country, but I'm right next door. I'm right in Nigeria. I'm getting money posted up in Nigeria. Emmanuel Macron is intelligent enough to know that the leaders of the AES would take that as a hostile force setting up shop on their borders. No different than how the United States would react if Russia set up shop right off the edge of Florida, right? It's the same way they would react if China set up shop right off the edge of their border. That's the same exact reason why the United States doesn't want any of their neighbors having any friendly relations with Russia, right? They don't want any of their neighbors, anybody within their hemisphere having relations with Russia, inviting Russia in to do business, inviting Russia in to set up a military base, because nobody wants a hostile force set up right on your border. That's just basic common sense in geopolitics, right? You don't want a hostile nation right at your gates. And in this situation, that's exactly what's happening. So not only is France trying to forge and solidify economic ties with Nigeria to try to maybe make up for what they lost in Mali, Burkina Faso, with Niger and other surrounding countries, but also they want to send a message in terms of psychological warfare that we are still here. We are directly at your gates. Not only are we still here, but we are at your gates, right? So it's psychological warfare at play with this thing too. But anyways, let's take a look at some of the reactions from Nigerians on social media when it was announced that the Nigerian government and the French government had signed an MOU for the critical minerals. Take a look up on the screen. This person said, "It has started, and it is clear. The same France that has reaped off several African countries, these countries have cut ties with France. Here we have a president actively romancing France." This person said, "I hope the terms and conditions for the development of Nigeria's mineral value chain is not like that of Francophone West Africa, where exploitation is the grand order of the deal." Now, like I mentioned before, you could take a look at pretty much any Francophone country that has been under the neo-colonial subjugation of the French, and you can see that there is no development in sight. There is no added value in the critical mineral sector. There is no prosperity. There is no there's no abundance. It's just squalor, poverty, and struggle and depression, and no hope for tomorrow. And to add insult to injury, you got terrorists trying to destroy you at the same time. Now let's continue. This person said, "Everybody's cutting ties with France, who leeches on their African partners. Why is Nigeria entering into a deal with these parasites?" This person said, "No wonder Macron was speaking pidgin." Yeah, exactly, man. Macron was on Twitter writing in pidgin, man. That's how desperate that boy is. He my God, man, singing and dancing for Tinubu, speaking in pidgin. The desperation is outstanding. This person said, "Niger shut them out from their uranium, and now they have come for our minerals. Leeching." This person said, "France has been booted out of exploiting Francophone countries, and now they have positioned themselves in Nigeria. What value are they bringing to the solid mineral value chain? The imperialists just do not stop." Now let's get back into the article. Macron may be able to woo Africa's English-speaking leaders, but African public opinion is another story. France is widely perceived as a poison chalice and is likely to fuel animosity against any African leader who seeks an overly public partnership. Exactly, man. France's reputation in Africa is destroyed to the point where if you are a leader, you can't even stand next to the president of France without everybody talking down on you. Now, I want to really give us a round of applause. In less than 10 years, we have destroyed the French reputation in Africa. You see, 10 years ago, France still had somewhat of a decent reputation in Africa. You know, people loved French culture. I want to go to France, see the Eiffel Tower. I want to go to Paris. I want to go to Marseille. I want to wear Louis Vuitton. I want to drink French wine, right? But we have destroyed the French reputation in Africa in less than 10 years. I've seen the French reputation in Africa go from one that is respected to one to where, like the article said, African leaders can't even stand next to a French president without getting slandered by the citizens of their nation. That is amazing, right? So we've made France radioactive. Do you know how terrible your reputation has to be to where nobody can even stand next to you? If somebody even stand next to you, their credibility comes into question. That's how controversial and damaged your reputation is. That is we've literally turned the French radioactive, bro, to where no black man can even stand next to a French president and have credibility anymore. This is amazing, right? This is amazing. So even though they might try to put on a good face and say, "Oh, we never left Africa, we still in Africa." Yes, you're still in Africa, but your name is not good in the hood anymore, right? Your name is not good anymore. Your face card is not good anymore, bro. Anyways, man, I'm going to play some footage from an interview with Dr. Usman Youssef speaking on this whole situation, right? He can speak on it better than I can, right? He's an intellectual. He's connected to the halls of power in Nigeria, right? He's a Nigerian man, so he can speak from his perspective better than I can. So I'm going to run the footage and let's get it.
France has been in all these Francophone African countries, West Africa, for 66 years, and they've been kicked out. They've been kicked out of recently Chad, Senegal, Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, five of your neighbors kicked a colonial master, and all of a sudden you are hugging that person. There is something you guys know that we don't know. But let's look at the history of France in Africa or anywhere else in the world. It's not been good. Look at all these countries. You need to ask yourself, why was France kicked out of those places? You are literally sucking their resources. And there is no development in any of these countries, any. You go to Chad, you go to Mali, you go to Burkina Faso, you go to Niger, there is nothing to see, but they've been sucking their uranium and gold. All of a sudden, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is in this love fest with Macron and France. We're asking ourselves why. What do we have in common with France? Literally nothing. France opposed the formation, the creation of ECOWAS. France opposed the creation and sabotaged the creation of a single ECOWAS currency, the ECO. And France literally sabotaged ECOWAS by this young military hunters leaving ECOWAS. Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. ECOWAS is now just a shell. You remember after the coup in Niger? Nigeria, the president had just started, he had not even assembled his team. He said, we're going to attack France, we're going to attack Niger, and I'm sure prodded by France. We in the north resisted vehemently. We're not going to allow Nigeria to invade Niger because the fight was going to be a proxy war. America, the United States of America, had one of the biggest drone bases in Agadas, in Niger. Yeah, this thing was, they're going to fight Islamists and all that. No, insecurity has been much worse where you have foreign bases by these foreign countries. The reason France is cozying to Nigeria and President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is allowing them to, and we will resist, is because they are looking for a place to situate their military base after being kicked out. We in the north, which is a place they are looking to locate these bases, we in the north will vigorously resist any foreign military boots on our soil. So, Mr. President, you need to know, we do not have any historical ties, defense or economic or linguistic with France. And all this cozying the French are doing, the reception they gave Mr. President was fit for a king. He will not get that if he goes to England or the United States or anywhere in the world. What is France getting for that? France wants three things. One, it wants right to concessions to exploit our minerals, which are predominantly in the north, which is what they've been doing in Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. Number two, they want concessions in oil and gas.
If there will be ways in which we can work with France to stem that tide, wouldn't you encourage it?
Right, and that's the scary part, Steve. If France could help any country with security, why didn't he help Mali? Why didn't he help Niger? Why didn't he help Burkina Faso? Why didn't he help Chad? It's been there forever. Their troops have been there forever. You think it didn't help them with all their bases? It's going to help you? Steve, let's wake up. Only Nigeria can help itself by liberating itself from these colonial forces that are doing nothing but stirring trouble in the Sahel. So they're looking for three things. They are looking to come and exploit our mineral resources predominantly in the north. They are looking to explore oil and gas, which they ran away from, and they are coming. And number three, most importantly, most worrying, and everybody in Nigeria, I beg you to lend me your ears. We will resist vehemently any attempt by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's government to allow any foreign military base on our soil, particularly in the north, because it's going to be a harbinger of trouble. All these Lakura things you're hearing, it is the French that started all of this things. They started all of this things. Wherever France was in West Africa, there's no peace. Why would President Bola Ahmed Tinubu bring them back without consulting anybody? So, military base, France or America or any country will be resisted vigorously by all of us because this is a country we love, and we're not going to allow recolonization of this Nigeria like they've done in the other countries. In Hausa, there's a saying, if you see the beard of your neighbor catches fire, put water, dampen water on yours. Well, France has put fire all over the Sahel. And we are inviting them into our household? No, we are not going to do that. Business, do that. And it has to go through due process. And I'm calling on our sleepy, do-nothing 10th Assembly to wake up to its responsibility. They are the ones we elected. They are the ones who should checkmate President Bola Ahmed Tinubu in all the opaque things he's been doing. He disappears into France for working holiday, and nobody knows what he's going to do there. Like he's being called for consultation. This is a democracy, not a military rule. And we need to know what our government and our president is taking us into. But foreign military base is a no-no. And exploiting our mineral resources behind our back is not going to happen. It's going to be transparent, there's going to be open bid, and all of us stakeholders must be involved in this. Thank you very much.
No. Feel like I'm 75. Know that your team be full of them traders, you know that can never be mine. I'm grabbing a thought when I drive. I'm back in my zone and we young. She said that she ready to come be my wife, yeah, hoping I don't do her wrong. I gave her my word and it's wrong. I'm whipping the best like a lamb. I'm eating no chicken and lamb. Accustomed to call me the man. I never be up on the gram. I'm keeping that way undercover. She want me to tell her I love her. I told her I'm breaking the rules. I told her we making the news. Back in my city, they loving me. Standing alone, I'm 100 deep. Enemy plotting and still in reach. They try to make sure that we underneath. Trying to make sure that we never make it. Coming for power, come get acquainted. Coming for everything that I wanted. Feeling like Drake, but I really wrote it. Feeling like Kendrick, I'm checking names. Gotta roll up while I go insane. Got so much stress, I been gained weight. Stuffing these racks in this Louis case. One thing for certain, I'm about to check. Keep it 100 and nothing less. Stick with the family since day one. Had to stay down till my day come. Had to stay down, but I'm never patient. Hop on the mic and I'm motivated. Hop on the mic and I drive a classic. Haters can't see me, they copping glasses. Back in the studio making magic. Got a new tape and it's in production. Back on my business, I got a budget. Staying low key when I'm out in public. Feel like I'm 75. Know that your team be full of them traitors, you know that can never be mine. I'm grabbing a thought when I drive. I'm back in my zone and we on. She said that she ready to come be my wifey and hoping I don't do her wrong. I gave her my word in this bond. I'm whipping the best like a lamb. I mean no chicken and lamb. Accustomed to call me the man. I never be up on the gram. I'm keeping that way undercover. She want me to tell her I love her. I told her I'm breaking the rules. I told her we making the news. Making the news. Making the news. Breaking the rules. Yeah. Know that we making the news.